Thank you, choir. So we pick up today and continue a series, All You Need Is Love. If you have your Bible, we invite you to turn to the book of Colossians. These are words that are not exclusively for husband and wife, but for all of us who share in any relationship at all with others, which means everybody's name is on the envelope. Colossians, the 3rd chapter, verses 12 through 14. Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with each other and forgive whatever grievances you may have against one another. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. And over all these virtues put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. A recent magazine article came out describing the attitudes of marriage as it seems to go from ecstasy to agony. And what it does, it goes through each of the first 7 years of how a husband reacts to his wife having a cold. So the first year of marriage, the husband says, "Sugar dumpling, I'm worried about my baby girl. You've got a bad sniffle. There's no telling how these things will go with all the strep around. I'm putting you in the hospital this afternoon for a general checkup and a good rest. I know the food's lousy, but I'll bring you meals in from Rossini's. I've already got it arranged with the floor superintendent." Second year of marriage. "Listen, darling, I don't like the sound of that cough, and I've called Doc Miller to rush over here. Now you go to bed like a good girl, please, just for Papa." Third year of marriage. "Maybe you better lie down, honey. Nothing like a little rest when you feel punk. I'll bring you something to eat. Have we got any soup?" Fourth year. "Look, dear, be sensible. After you feed the kids and get the dishes washed, you better hit the sack." Fifth year. "Why don't you get a couple of aspirin?" Sixth year. "If you just gargle or something instead of sitting around barking like a seal." Seventh year. "For Pete's sake, stop sneezing. What you trying to do? Give me pneumonia?" Sound familiar? Honeymoons don't last forever. Do I get an amen? You go down to the Bahamas, or yesterday was a couple that got married who are going to St. Lucia. You sip a few daiquiris, non-alcoholic of course. You snorkel in the clear water and you feel the wonderful sea breeze, and you sit back and you think, boy, marriage is wonderful. And then you come back home. And somewhere along the way, inevitably, there will be that moment where that marriage that was made in heaven suddenly has to work somehow down here on earth. And so the message today is, what do you do after the honeymoon is over? What do you do when the finances go south, or the children interrupt everything, or your spouse breathes on you in the morning? Let me state the biblical foundation for this message. Every wedding ceremony, as I did even yesterday afternoon, I always say the words, marriage is a sacred institution. It's not created by humans. It's not our idea. It was God's idea. And so what that invites of us and challenges us is that we are to be stewards of that institution, which means we are to tend to it. We are to nurture it. We are to certainly cherish it. And in all ways, we are to be faithful to it. Ultimately, best understood, marriage is a gift from God, but it's certainly not for everyone. Do we think less of Jesus? Oh, he couldn't find a mate. Do we not recall the words of the Apostle Paul, who advocated against it, if at all possible? But if we are entering into it, we understand it among all relationships, neighbors, co-workers, even parents, There is no higher relationship and no more important relationship to be tended to and cared for than that of marriage. But the truth is, marriage somewhere along the way for just about everybody will one day fall out of love, which is a good thing. Because a marriage based on Hollywood standards and romance novel kind of stuff is a marriage that inevitably is going to have a short shelf life. None of us are good enough as spouses to always be romantic enough or heartfelt enough or feeling enough. As I always say, all of us, we make pretty poor saviors. And so when there is that marriage that's looking to always meet your needs and always keep the heart fluttering, you're in for a short time, if you will. But of course, to fall in love, well, there is nothing like it. To have somebody who completes your sentences, to be able to laugh and play with someone, to have that connection that seems almost magical, but more important, seems secure. There's nothing like it. But then comes the day when the bills have to be paid, the laundry has to be done, the schedules have to be maintained, the children have to be driven while they're driving you crazy, and on and on and on, and that becomes a part of the married life. Whenever I do second marriages for couple, I'll do one next month in Chapel Hill. Always I'm aware that they have a better sense of what they are talking about when they share those vows. They really do get it a little more than any of us did initially. What it means for better, for worse, in sickness and in health, in adversity and prosperity. All of us, I know for me, and I certainly know for Kathy, when we got married, we didn't have a clue, totally. There's no way you can of what you're getting yourself into. And so for many couples, what happens somewhere along the way, we drift into a new normal. A new normal, it's not so much that you hate each other as much as you just endure each other. There's no romance or expectations of intimacy much anymore. We get along. We're not going to divorce, but we're not going to go any better at all. And so we share a roof. We share a couple of kids maybe. We share promises that we will keep. We're not going to break them. And what is sad for me is that for many couples, that has become the new normal. That has been the ceiling of what they expect now and what really a marriage is just about. It doesn't get any better than that. And so this morning, may I offer an alternative. Learn to love again. Learn to love again. It doesn't come easily. It doesn't happen overnight. But what it does invite and challenge us is to now enter into a more sober, a more covenant kind of relationship that is reflective of the love that God has for each of us. The great thing somebody said about being married a long time is that you can fall in love with the same person again and again and again. All of us, if we've been married any time at all, we are different people. We should be. It'd be bad if we're not. In the day years ago when we were first married. And so we learn to grow together. And we fall in love with this person who continues to change and grow, even as hopefully we change and grow at the same time. John Gottman, in his New York Times best-selling book, The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work, he talks about how it is possible to nurture fondness even when your marriage is on the rocks. Remember what I said a couple weeks ago? It's just still my favorite prayer. But Bruce Carey, Jim Carrey, he's in the movie Bruce Almighty. He's struggling with his girlfriend, Jennifer Aniston. I don't get that, but anyway. He's struggling with her, and so he prays that wonderful prayer. God, help me to see her the way you see her. You can never go wrong with that kind of prayer. See, here's how Christian love works. We don't love a person because they're beautiful. That's Hollywood. Image. The more beautiful you are, the more attractive and inviting you are. We don't love because somebody is beautiful. Here's how it works. Somebody becomes beautiful because we love them. And they grow in that way that you behold them, and they become that person that you behold. Erwin Lawson, in his book, Learning to Love, he writes, a woman came to her lawyer and said, I want a divorce as quickly as I can get one. I really hate my husband and I want to hurt him. I want to get everything he has and then some. Give me your best advice. The attorney, who was a lot like her, told her that if she was so determined to divorce the guy, she ought to make the best of the time until the legal action was finalized. And so he said, here's my best advice. For the next 3 months, don't fight with him and don't criticize him. Speak only well of him. Build him up. Every time he does something nice, compliment him. Tell him what a great guy he is. After he thinks that he has all your confidence and love, hit him with the bad news and it will hurt him even more. So the woman liked what she heard, and so she went about doing that. For the next 3 months, she complimented him in every turn. She built him up, told him how attractive he was, all of these positive things. At the end of the 3 months, they didn't get a divorce. They ended up going on a second honeymoon. The point, I would hope, would be obvious. If you're looking for something to fault, complain, criticize about your spouse, well, we all give each other plenty of material. But if your sincere desire is to be loving and to be Christ-like in your marriage, then you'll find ways to lift, build up, and encourage and bless. The Apostle Paul in that great love chapter says, love does not keep any record of wrongdoing. Just a little tip here. Never stop going big on the little things. In her best-selling book, The Surprising Secrets of a Highly Happy Marriage, social researcher Shaunti Feldman shared the survey of over 1,000 couples, interviewed them, classified them everything from struggling to happy and fulfilled. And among her findings, small things like saying thank you, showing affection in public really mattered. She talked about a conversation she had with a friend of hers who was struggling in the marriage, later had a divorce. She said her friend's husband worked hard to provide for her family, but paid little attention to the family. The marriage eventually unraveled. Here's what she said about it. He worked so hard to take us on an amazing vacation in Hawaii. What I really want him to do is just put his arm around me in church. Now, I was waiting because in the early service when I said that, a couple sitting in the back, the husband put his arm around her as I said that. I didn't see any of you all do that. That's okay. That's all right. This sermon is definitely for you all. All right. So other day-to-day habits, like leaving a voicemail or just a little text in the middle of the day, not just the words I love you, which sometimes lose their value, but saying it in some different way. You know, this week, I knew I was preaching this sermon, so I thought, I better do this, or my wife's going to say, well, how come you never do this? You know, so I gave it a try. I texted her right in the middle. She's at school. I said, I think I won the lottery because you're my wife. And I want to tell you, it works. I won't elaborate, I'll just say it works. It's a good thing, guys. Do these kind of things. It's very, very good. Paul says, kindness. Put your kindness. The older I get, the more kindness becomes, I think, more and more something to think about. To show kindness to one another. It sounds so vanilla, I know. Who gets excited about kindness? But what a wonderful thing to say of your spouse. He or she is always kind to me. Be careful about the words you use. You know, words have such a power to bless or to curse. Always show respect to one another. I was in my previous church at High Point. I was counseling with a couple, and the wife was complaining how he never gave her any compliments. I said, Walter, give her a compliment right now. And this is what he said. You used to be really attractive until you put on all that weight. I said, Walter, that is not a compliment. I said, that is not what we're talking about. He really thought that was a good thing. We must be careful about the words that we use with each other. Think about it. Your best friend, the people you just love to be with, they all have shortcomings. Every person in this room has shortcomings. Every spouse has shortcomings. And how come we raise the bar so high on our spouses in ways we would never do with friends and other people around us? Reminds me of the classic exchange between a woman and her therapist. He was concerned about her constant bouts of depression. So one day he asked her, said, do you wake up grumpy? She said, no, he wakes up himself. So you got to be careful. Kindness. The little things really do make a difference. Colossians here just spells it all out. Not just for husbands and wives, but for all of us in every relationship. Co-workers, neighbors, friends, fellow students. Clothe yourselves. Yes, Sarah said, I'm very glad all of you clothed yourselves this morning. Very glad. You didn't think twice about that. That became natural for you. So it should be just as natural as the people of God that we clothe ourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. A person who did that as well as anybody I know. A man named Cecil Sherman. Some of you know that name. Cecil Sherman was the longtime First National Coordinator of Cooperative Baptist Fellowship. For years, he was pastor of First Baptist Church, Asheville, married to his wife for over 50 years. But eventually came the time in her life when she had Alzheimer's. And so early on, she started losing her way just to the grocery store. Eventually, she would soil herself, and they had to get diapers and change her. And finally, he and his daughter had to make that awful decision to put her into a facility. Writing about that in his memoirs, he said, I never dreamed that one day I would commit that beautiful girl I met in Greer, South Carolina, back in 1950 to a nursing home. Little did I know all I was saying when I stood before that preacher and vowed, in sickness and in health, for better or for worse, till death do us part. Now each afternoon I drive the 12 miles to her, sit with her for a time, feed her dinner, and then return to the west end of Richmond. I push her wheelchair to a shady place, and she would enjoy the flowers. Each day she said the same thing. Are we married? I assured her that we were. Then she asked, how long have we been married? I said, 50 years. Upon hearing this, she said, that's a long time. The next day we repeated the same conversation. One day when she was more clear than usual, she asked, do you want me to die? There was no antecedent to that comment. I've been talking about the weather, about oatmeal, and then she said that. I collected myself and I said, I come to you every day because I love you. I don't want you to die. She made no reply. Every day I sit with her on a sofa in her room, put my arm around her and tell her I love her. I do this every day. I don't know how much of what I say penetrates her consciousness. When I tell her I love her, I tell her that I'm going to be with her no matter what. She is not going to be abandoned. What I promised a long time ago in Greer, South Carolina, is a promise that still holds. This is not the story of some Superman. The story of an ordinary man. It can be the story of any man and any woman who decide to love one another with a covenant love, a tough love, a love not based on feeling all the time or getting your way every day. It's a love that lasts. That's what our faith teaches us. It teaches us that after the honeymoon is inevitably over, we can still love again and again and again because of God. Our hymn of invitation this morning, hymn number 505, Happy the Home Where God is There. This morning there may be some who feel God's leading to make your profession of faith, or to unite with this church or another church family, or make some renewed commitment to your faith. I'll be at the front to receive you. Let us stand and sing to the glory of God, hymn number 505.